Shut up and sit down.
Well, they say all good things come to an end.
What's that got to do with this show?
Nice ride, it's a nice time when you're on a nice ride, riding with your best friends. Nice ride, it's a nice time when you're on a nice ride, riding with your best friends.
Oh, I like to ride my bike.
You are listening to the Dialed Podcast with Matt Legrand, Evan Price, Lance Hepler, and Jake Von Turing. Want to control your destiny? Well, this little green frog once said, life's like a movie, write your own ending. Yeah, I like that.
Thinking this morning, walking and driving is so boring. It doesn't cost much, and there's no gas. It's 15. I tell him that I loved him.
Nice ride, it's a nice time when you're on a nice ride, riding with your best friends. Nice ride, it's a nice time when you're on a nice ride, riding with your best friends.
That was awesome!
Hi, welcome back to the Dial Podcast. I am Jake Von Turing. I'm here with Lance Hepler.
Lance Romance coming at you live and in person right here in the Dialed Cycling Lab.
Good to have you back in studio, Lance.
Thank you.
It's like, how many weeks in a row now?
It's like 4 weeks in a row, 3, I don't know, something like that.
That's almost a record.
I know. I'm ready to leave again, but I'm not.
Live on the interwebs, I've got Mr. Matt Legrand with us.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? You guys are looking fan-frickin-tastic today.
And we've got a special guest with
truth.
us today from BBinfinite, all the way across the country just about. Gary. Gary, how are you?
I am doing very well. We're not going to do NPR voices. I thought we were going to do NPR voice.
Go for it. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Welcome to
Dude,
Hey,
I don't have that in me.
studio.
Gary, pronounce your last name for us.
Way down here. Mailhiot.
Mailhiot. Okay, I didn't want to butcher that. That's why I just went with the Gary, right?
That's a good call.
Oh, go ahead. Everybody does.
Gary
Except
Mailhiot
for French
from
people.
BBinfinite. Oh, Gary Mailhiot Jr., as a matter of fact. So today we are going to kind of run through a bunch of stuff about BBinfinite. We are huge fans over here. We've been using them for, about 3 or 4 years now,
Yep.
and have used them to
Excellent.
solve a lot of problems and to gain some speed. So we're going to dive into that. I've got a bunch of questions that we're going to run through. Before that, though, let's get through our back pedal. Lance, kick us off. I don't think anybody else really did. Well, Gary maybe, but I know I didn't do much. So we're just going to go straight, cut to the chase. Bring it.
I got to race my bike
You
this
sure
week.
did.
I raced my bike yesterday, which was super fun. I did a mountain bike race up in the Tacoma, Washington area, a place called Dash Point. There is a race promotion company called Voodoo Racing. I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago because Paige Edwards, our illustrious, she's not a junior anymore.
No, she's women's U23 elite.
Yeah, there you go. She's been doing some of the races, and so me and Chris Surratt went up to do the race, and it was a mountain bike race on single-track trails. There were I raced the Cat 2 division, and it went pretty well.
I saw you won that, Lance. Congrats, my friend.
Thank you very much.
It wasn't even close, Lance. You beat about like 3 or 4 minutes.
So they did it like time trial style, right? So one person went off every 10 seconds, and the leaders in the series all went first. So there were seven people who started in front of me in 10-second intervals.
And you lapped them all, or you passed them all, I'm guessing.
I caught them. I caught the last one about 8 minutes into the race. I passed
You know how
all.
demoralizing that? Well, they're probably thinking, unless they're paying attention to the shoot, they're probably thinking, oh, it was just the guy behind me. It was like, oh, no, that was like 7 or 8 guys behind you that just...
I was way back there. The funniest thing, I've never heard this before, one of the guys saw me, when he saw me afterwards, he's like, when I saw you, I'm like, oh, there's a guy who's tall and skinny and muscular. He's going to be fast. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever been called tall or skinny or muscular. So that was kind of fun. Yes, it went well. I probably should have raced Cat 1. I haven't raced any Cat 1. Yeah, I haven't raced. I ended up winning there were roughly 50 people in the Cat 2 division, and I won by about 5 minutes. in a.
Sounds like Tom Brady showed up to a high school football game.
Thank you, Gary.
It was like a 50-minute race. I think I did. If I had
Kind of
raced,
like I see it.
if I had raced in the Cat 1, they did 3 laps. I only did 2 laps. I probably would have been close to the top 10 for the whole race and possibly in the top 3. There were a couple of 50-plus Cat 1 guys who would have smoked me. So it wouldn't have been a given. But anyway, yeah, I caught some sandbagging flack, and it's probably all true, and it's all from the people who love me. So, but it was just super fun to get out there and race. It was COVID safe. It was time trial style. We had a great time. It was just fun to peg my heart rate for a solid 50 minutes. So that was fun.
49 and change, right?
Yeah, something like that.
How about you, Matt? How was your week?
Good. Week was solid. I think I've settled into like a real nice pattern with all the triathlon training. I'm getting like, I'd say, somewhere between, like 10 and 12 activities, all kind of short stuff, but like, getting there, getting some stuff done. I think I ran like 3 or 4 times. A lot of that was like in the snow. In the Pacific Northwest, we got just dumped on here, which was awesome because my kids they were starved for snow. All the biking was like Zwift except for Saturday when I went out on Lance's old mountain bike and cruised around at cross country practice. I coach cross country for those of you guys that don't know in the area. And so having the mountain bike is fantastic for that, because I can just kind of like pedal around wherever they go, I can go and I can do workouts with them. I can do whatever I need to do or just go do my own thing, which is kind of what I did on Saturday to kill some time and have some fun. So loving that bike. Swimming a good bit when the pool was open because of the snow, everything was kind of closed. But yeah, great week of training. I just need to get my cankle to come around, get that thing a little bit better, and hopefully that'll happen by this summer. But we'll see.
Very good, Gary. How was your week, man?
My week was awesome. Little Rock is not used to getting 14 inches of snow. That is extremely unusual. Oh, we got a lot of for here. We got a lot of snow. I mean, they just don't have the equipment. So, I mean, we were basically stuck in the house. Me and a friend of mine, we committed to do a 6-hour marathon on the trainers.
Oh.
And
no, thank you.
It's freaking brutal. It was just brutal. I only did it 3 hours. I was like, I just can't do it anymore. I feel like my soul is dying. You know what I mean? It's just anyway. So that was about it, man. I mean, there was nothing going on. I mean, last time I went out when it was really, really icy in Little Rock, I fell down and broke my hand.
Oh
no.
So I decided that I wouldn't tempt fate because I need my hands to work. So
excellent.
There you go.
So
all the fun.
I've heard of Bentonville as far as like huge mountain bike. How close is that? How close is Little Rock to Bentonville?
Not close enough.
Got it.
Not close enough, Lance. Not close enough. No, it's about 3 hours from here if you drive like a normal person.
Yeah.
There's places like Silmo. There's some places around here we have some awesome mountain biking trails just out here at something called Pinnacle, which I'm very lucky enough I can see it from my kitchen window. It's really nice. It's the tallest it's the tallest peak around here, which was not much. I mean,
yeah.
But for where we are, it's because we're not even in the Ozarks. But anyway, they've developed so many trails out here because this is Walton country. I mean Bentonville more so, but the Walmart people are really into cycling. They bought High Velo, which is Allied Cycle Works, and they moved that all up to Bentonville. It was down here. And, Orbea is here. And a lot of people don't realize that.
It's in Little Rock?
Orbea is, North Little Rock to be exact. We're actually in North Little Rock, which is a separate city, although it just sounds like we're on the other side of town. So we're in North Little Rock, which is right over the Arkansas River from downtown Little Rock.
Gotcha.
And, but anyway, they've done huge development, but they just had all these trails put in at Pinnacle mountain bike trails. This is a great place to cycle. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I got here. I moved here from Florida 10 years ago, and 5311, baby, Florida.
Right.
Oh, dude, you're talking about just group rides. It's like guys just on the front just driving. You know what I mean? At Florida, these like 29-mile-an-hour, like tandems showing up to pace everybody. You're like, oh God, you know, just holding on for your life. I showed up here. It's a completely different world of cycling, and it's a completely different world. So anyway, it's great. It's a great town. It's a really great town for cycling. I love it here.
Awesome.
Bentonville's awesome mecca for mountain biking. Everybody needs to come check it out. It's way beyond what you think, dude. They got.
Oh no. Looks like we just lost Gary.
We just lost Gary for wait.
Oh,
there
he is. Oh, hold on. Oh no, look at this. This is all like turning into a
Oh wait.
Gary, you still there? We lost his audio. Oh, hold on.
Matt, can we hear you?
Yeah, you guys can hear me just fine.
Okay. Hold on. Let's try that one more time, Gary. We're not getting your audio, bud. Oh no.
I'm guessing his microphone dropped, maybe from like it could be a Bluetooth connection issue.
Gary, why don't you do this? Since we are live streaming this on YouTube, I'm going to resend you that link that will get you connected back into the show. While we're connecting Gary back on, Lance, why don't you do some of that?
Champ Bailey,
top 5? I think he's in the top 5 discussion. I mean, I'm not just going to go out crazy
Hall
and
of
say
Famer?
top 3. Hall of
Famer.
Champ Bailey. Champ Bailey by Champ Bailey.
Champ Bailey.
Champ Bailey, right here in the house. Here I am. Yes, there was some racing that happened this last week. The big race that's going on is the UAE Tour, the tour of the United Arab
Just stick with UAE.
UAE.
United, yeah.
Nailed it.
Arab Emirates.
The Emirates. So this is Monday. There's been 2 stages so far. The first stage was riddled with crosswinds. It broke up the peloton into 4 different echelons. It was actually beautiful looking racing, but very difficult for the racers and for the riders. And in kind of a not so shock, but still kind of a shock, the first stage was won by Matthew Vanderpool.
Go figure.
So he actually made that front echelon and was cruising in that front echelon, and he out-sprinted a couple of big sprinters, you know, in that reduced sprint at the end, and it was kind of unbelievable. Chris Froome ended up in the very last echelon, and I think Adam Yates did as well. So some of the big names that they were hoping would do well in this race, lost 8 minutes right off the bat. So pretty crazy. And then somebody on Matthew Vanderpool's Alpecin Phoenix team tested positive, and the whole team pulled out of the tour. So he is. I don't think he was planning on doing the whole UAE tour anyway, because he's gearing up for the Spring Classics, and he's trying to get ready for that. So,
hey, Champ, hold on a second. Gary, can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine.
Hey, he's back. All right.
Perfect.
Like we never missed a beat, right? We're professional over here.
Yeah. Believe it or not, John Cobb, a guy from Cobb Cycling, was calling me John
Cobb.
Oh, wow.
Funny. All right, cool.
I know. Name dropping.
Put a pin in that second, Champ. I'm going to do my back pedal. I rode on Zwift way too much, and it sucked. All right, that's it.
Hey,
moving on.
We did a team ride.
We did do a team ride.
We did do a team ride,
which
on
I had
Zwift.
some technical difficulties. Again, there's a quirk in Zwift. There's a problem with the software, the firmware.
Something's happening.
I'm
with
the
your
ride
ride
leader, and it has been freezing my my power numbers. It only happens on Zwift when I'm riding as the ride leader for our meetup ride. That's the only time that ever happens.
Oh, jeez.
So it is what it is. I'm going to send them a service request or something like that. But anyway, moving on. Go back to the news there, Champ Bailey.
So second stage of the UAE Tour was a very short, 8-mile time trial, which happened Monday, and big surprise, it was won by Filippo Ganna from Italy. So he is kind of crushing everybody, but Tadej Pogacar also did very well, and he's in the lead. Did I butcher it?
Pogacar.
Whatever.
You saved yourself.
Okay. So that's basically what's happened in the racing world. There was another tour, the Tour des Alpes Maritimes did whatever. It's something in France.
Nailed it.
Yep. And But nothing really struck me from that race that I felt like talking about. Champ Bailey out.
Thanks, Champ. We're going to jump in some Patreon news. But before we do that, I need to add another name to the hat, to the list.
What?
Can you go grab the little bucket
Yep.
thing where we do that? Just wanted to give a little shout out to Mr. John Hatfield, who is our latest and greatest Patreon. We've
Wow.
got
Thanks, John.
even more Patrons. So let's just do this. Rob Buck, since his name always jumps out of there. If you see Rob Buck, his name is now John Hatfield, because I haven't added him to the mix yet. So we're going to do a little bit of a drawing, though. And for the drawing this week, it's going to be another one of those cask neck buffs and a Sierra Nevada water bottle. So it'll be a nice little drawing. Lance is pulling this out right now. And drum roll, please. It is
Chris Surratt.
Chris Surratt. That would have been
nice.
awesome if you'd pulled that out last week when he joined us
was on
the
last
podcast.
week.
So, Mr. Chris Surratt, you get yourself a little new neck buff from Cask Helmets, as well as a nice little Sierra Nevada water bottle.
I don't want to rub it in at all, but all my laps yesterday in the race were 2 minutes faster than Chris Surratt's. So,
I mean,
For the two
just
laps
throw
you
that
did?
out there. I'm not going to rub it in.
I'm not going to rub it in, but let me say this to the whole world.
Wow. Lance, that's actually pretty impressive. He didn't have any technicals or any issues or any problems like that? Or
No, but the course was really well suited to me. Tight corners and
Yeah, and you did adjust his brakes before the race.
Yeah,
right,
that's
Lance?
right. I stuck something in his derailleur so it wouldn't shift properly. No.
That's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon, we've had a bunch of new ones recently, which is awesome. You can go to dialpodcast.com, and on that homepage right there, you will see a link to Patreon. You can click on through and pick a Patreon that works best for you. We appreciate that. Thank you to everybody who is supporting the show. Awesome, awesome stuff.
Love it.
Cool. All right, I think that is all of the minutia that is done and out of the way. Am I missing anything?
Nope. Let's talk bottom brackets.
Let's talk bottom brackets and all things that make you go faster with Gary. Gary, dude, tell us how did you get into this business? How did you get into like making bottom brackets and pulleys and
well, I have a machining background. We've got a little delay going here, but we'll run with it. I would just have a machining background, but it was all automotive and motorcycles and all that sort of thing. And but I've always really been big into cycling. Some things happened in my life, and I ended up working as a bike mechanic. And it was right about the advent of press fit bottom brackets, and I saw the need immediately. And my business partner Wes Wolfenbarger, he's out there running parts right now. So if you guys hear any noise, it's Wes, and running one of the CNC machines. Yeah, I got two of them out there ripping it up right now, making English threaded bottom brackets. Believe it or not, even though we're here to talk about press fit, most likely. And we just saw, I got this to keep it even more. I got this Willier Cento Uno SR frame, and it was BB386 Evo that had just come out, and they sent this huge bag of plastic adapters, and I had this brand new campy record Grupo going on there with a beautiful ultra torque crank right out of the box. And I was like, no way, dude. That is ridiculous. I'm not putting this in there like that. And I did. I assembled it so I could ride the bike, and it hardly spun. And I was just like, this is absolute rubbish. And it was a big Cervelo dealer that I was working at here in Little Rock and Cannondale. So that just fit right in there. We just got adopted basically by the Cervelo people like right away, because we featured Cervelos in all of our videos. And anyway, so that's what happened, man. That was the genesis of it right there.
That was how long ago? How long ago was that, Gary?
This is 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, 2012 is when we were doing that, and it was one of these things where we kind of just looked at it and we're like, dude, let's just make it one piece and just have it all go in from one side. So we went ahead and did that, and it works so incredibly well. I showed it to some people at the shop, and had a bunch of dudes, especially on Specialized at the time. They're all OSBB press fit, which is their 46 by 61. Super problematic. Not because this is a whole other issue. I would defend Specialized to the death. That it was not their fault. It was an implementation issue, not a design. Their frames were made so awesome. They should have never creaked. It's a very sad thing. But anyway, they had huge problems. And so we made bottom brackets for that. We sold a just ton of them here locally because everybody was riding on S-Works. It's just super popular around here.
Yeah.
And that was it, man. That's the genesis of it. And then we just started making a small run, small batch. And next thing you know, we're here, in our facility making, 2 CNC machines running every day and shipping out all over the world. Have distribution in UAE, in in Malaysia, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Taiwan.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we're real heavy in Asia. We have a really good presence in Asia. I just think they like the unique nature of the design of the bottom bracket, and for them, it's just something really different. It's not coming from China or Taiwan, so I think that's interesting. So,
cool.
And they love the performance.
How big is your operation there then?
Not very. We only have 4 employees total. We're all about efficiency. As a matter of fact, I said they were out on the CNC machines. They're mostly babysitting them and then running the CMM, which is what we do. We take each part after it's run and take it over, and we have a machine that measures it, rather than hand doing it with a mic and stuff like that, which is how we started out. And those are all basically robotic. They're self-feeding and all that. We just need to keep feeding them material, and we're only 4,000 square feet. And we're doing everything out of here. We have lasers set up, so we do all this, all marking on the products. You'll see there. We do all that. We do all that here in house. The only thing we don't do is anodize, which we send that out to California. Believe it or not.
Yeah. So it's all based in the United States. It's all manufactured in the United States as well. So
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Which we're very passionate about. Just because the state of affairs in the United States, we really need more manufacturing here. I don't want to get into it too much, but I mean, we have a very financialized economy right now. You go into a lot of schools. My kids go to STEM schools. They're pretty good, but otherwise, a lot of kids are just they're brought in. They're like, you want to have a white collar on and carry a suit, a briefcase to work, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not against that kind of thing, but to push every kid into that is very detrimental, because some kids just don't want to do that. And also, we need people in this country that know how to actually manufacture things and do things. I mean, if I try to find a machinist right now, I'm going to get inundated with emails after this podcast of people probably sending me their credential to be a machinist. But if you go out and try to find a machinist right now, good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not that they're all employed. It's just that there aren't any. There are a bunch of old guys that are dying off, and there's just no young guys really coming up right now. So it's a sad state of affairs. Not to cast a pall over the conversation here, but it's something we really feel passionate about. And the Made in the USA, it only means something if it's a great product.
Yes.
Just because it's made here doesn't mean it's great. There's plenty of stuff here that's crap, that's made here. But we love manufacturing here. We had a chance to shift our entire production over to Taiwan years ago, and we were under a lot of pressure to do it because there were 2 major bicycle manufacturers that wanted to buy our product OE, and they're like, there's no way we could meet the price. They want it for nothing, dude. I mean, I'm not going to say who they are, but it's all the same way. They just want it for absolutely nothing, and they're like, well, they hooked us up with their people in Taiwan and their people in China, and we were back and forth, and we had them do some samples for us. And after a while, we're just like, no way, man, our product's going to suck. Yeah. So it's kind of like Steve Jobs, when he was like, yeah, how do you become successful? You just don't make shit. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Pardon my language. But I mean, that's how you do it. So that's why we do what we do.
I got a question about the name BBinfinite and kind of the origins of it. Does that mean that your bottom brackets are supposed to last forever? Because I love that plan.
Well, that kind of dovetails with the quality aspect of it. And whenever it comes to quality, there's a macro and a micro aspect, and then there's layers. And the reason we go BB is obvious because we're at our core discipline is of course bottom brackets, and then the infinite part was the idea that our spin is going to be, absolutely amazing. So that has but also that the product is serviceable. Okay, that you can service the bearings in the bike, and if the bearings ever go bad, you can remove the bearings and replace them with new bearings.
Yeah.
Okay, this is extremely important to us, because serviceability is something that has died out on too many consumer products, and we've gotten to the point where we just throw stuff away. All right, we need to stop doing that, as a culture, in my opinion. So in order, it's kind of like be the solution.
Right.
So we want to make a product that somebody can invest in initially, and that they can use over and over again. We have people that have used the same BBinfinite bottom bracket in 3 or 4 different bikes, because they race crits or whatever, and they wreck their bike out, and they pull it out and they put it in another bike. We just think that's extremely important, that we all quit making things that are just going to go in a landfill.
I have a cracked frame hanging on my wall, and the reason I haven't tossed it is because there's a bottom bracket in there that I know I'm going to need at some point. So it's just going to hang on my wall till I need that bottom bracket.
Well, there you go, man. We can. You need a number for a good guy that fixes carbon fiber. I can hook you up.
There you go. Awesome. We had a big list of questions for you. I'm just going to jump right into the first one. What is the best crank combination according to what bottom bracket standard your bike has? So what's that? I mean, what's your best recommendation there?
Well, that's an important question, because I think a lot of people build a bike around whatever. I mean, just off some vague ideas of, I want to run this certain crank in this certain bike, and there's certain cranks that just don't play as well with certain bottom bracket standards as we would like. Okay, we like right here, we have one right here. It's a BB86 dub and 30 millimeter. Okay, these are world class. We love this bottom bracket. BB86 and BB92 were really developed by Shimano. Okay, if anybody knows Shimano, they're not stupid. So what they did is they basically got together and made a bottom bracket standard that they probably were like, no idiot's going to try to put a 30 millimeter spindle in this thing. I mean, it's only 41 millimeters in diameter. We're going to make it so it will only work with Shimano cranks and GXP and some others, but mostly they just wanted to block everybody out. And we outsmarted them by coming up with a 40-30 bearing, which I could talk about because SRAM's using it now. And but if you have a BB86 bike, in the past, you really should have just run a 24 millimeter spindle. If you've got a campy bike, and you want to run, an ultra torque crank, you can run it in a lot of different bottom brackets. A really great bottom bracket to run a campy ultra torque crank in is BB30. I'm a huge fan of BB30 in general when you're running one of what I would call the legacy cranks, which is GXP, Shimano, and campy ultra torque. Those were all developed during the threaded bottom bracket era, so they all have that same basic stance. Campy's a little wider than GXP, and Shimano's the narrowest, right about 92 millimeters. And these particular ones are not as well suited to some of the bikes that have very narrow bottom bracket standards like BB30. But the beauty of it is when you press that into a BB30 shell, it sticks out on either side, so the bearings are outboard. And without getting into it too much, when the bearings are inboard of the frame, like on a BB86 or a BB92 or 3D6 Evo, the frame has a lot of influence on the final performance of the bearing, because it depends on how much the bearing can basically constrict on or create radial compression on the bearing. So anytime you can get the bearings outside the bike, you're going to be better off with a wider range of frame fitments, because some manufacturers have really good tolerances, some are not so good. So every once in a while you could be suffering from issues just because you tried to put the wrong crank in the wrong bike, and it's just got almost like a basic compatibility problem. Did that answer it?
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, and those legacy cranks, when you couple that with a Pressfit 30 or a BB30 frame, they just run so hard. Like a Shimano, like you have one of the new, you have like a pre-2021 S-Works or something like that. Those are a BB30 OSBB. BB30 and OSBB are the same thing. Why they're calling it something different, I don't know. They just want to confuse you. It's like Cannondale writes BB30 on the bottom of bikes that are press fit. That's a whole other issue. But you put that in there with a Shimano crank, that thing is going to rip, dude. I mean, this thing's going to be awesome. So it just spins so incredibly well. And it's one of these things where bottom brackets get to be a lot of an afterthought for a lot of people. They're like, they could tell you they're going to have these aero wheels and all that kind of stuff. The bottom bracket is where all of your power that you're creating, that you're generating, is feeding through the bottom bracket. That is your link to that is your link to the power. That's your power output right there. So it is absolutely necessary and important for you to have as little drag and as high performance as possible with that part, just like you would want with your wheel hubs, with every other part of your bike, and because that's where the core of the performance is on a bicycle, is through the bottom bracket.
How many bikes do you have, Gary, and what are you running?
Right now, I have behind me, I have this Cannondale System 6 that I really love, and I have right now I've got I'm up in the air on the mountain bike that I'm gonna get, but that's all I've got right now.
Okay.
I've just got the System 6. I'm really a road guy.
Gotcha.
I mean, I'm about to get right back into mountain biking. It was one of these things where I started out mountain biking, and then like 6 years ago I started road biking, and I just couldn't get enough of it.
Gotcha.
I just never looked back and just been road biking.
What group set are you running on it?
Oh, Dura Ace, and I'm running it with the Cannondale SI crank.
Gotcha.
Which Cannondale SI cranks have their problems, but at the end of the day, they're super light. I like the modularity, but you got to really stay on top of them because Cannondale, especially when there's a lot of temperature changes, you need to overhaul the crank. You need to take it apart. Yeah, they develop a lot of creaks. They can develop a lot of creaks because with temperature changes, the temperature changes are what really kills them because of they're all aluminum and they're all modular, so all the interfaces are aluminum. So when you have temperature changes, aluminum shrinks when it's really cold out, and then you end up with some creaking, and you got to take the crank arms off, take the spider off, and put more Loctite on the spider and put it anyway. So that's true of the SI cranks, but I love them. They're fantastic. Otherwise,
great. Matt, do you have any questions for Gary?
Yeah, I actually have quite a few questions.
I figured you would.
One of the questions, okay, so I have this YouTube channel, and I talk to a lot of people that are trying to make purchase decisions and all this stuff, right? And a lot of people will say, I picked this up and look at it, it's, they'll do the like, hey, this spins forever. And that's how they're basing their judgment on like the quality of the bearings and the quality of the system, whether that's pulley wheel or, bottom bracket or, loads of other locations, that this is like the end all be all like decision of whether or not it's a good system. I have a hard time explaining why that's a questionable approach. Usually I'll say like, okay, well, here's a fidget spinner and it spins forever, right? But are the bearings, the whole system in this fidget spinner, like high quality? Like then people start to realize, okay, no, maybe not. So my question to you is like, how do we explain bearing quality and in these systems to people that consider spins forever a quality judgment?
Well, being able to spin forever is part of the quality assessment. Okay, so we don't want to say that it's not, because we get a lot of questions about people, trolling, on YouTube and all this kind of stuff, talking about, yeah, but what is it like when you put it under a load? It's going to be the same. It's going to be just as good. I mean, there's no, the initial quality is the spinning, but also it's like, how did they achieve that spin? I mean, are there no seals in it? Are there no, because I mean, if you took that fidget spinner apart, you'll find that it probably has, I think,
zero grease,
like
right? Like
metal seals. Yeah, no grease, grease, anything like that. Now, on ceramic bearings, especially on our pulleys, you can run them without grease. Believe it or not, you can run them dry. As a matter of fact, we recommend you do on road bikes, and they're going to be extremely durable. That's the real advantage of ceramic bearings. Ceramic bearings don't need anywhere near as much lubrication in order to survive in the same environment that would be required for steel on steel because of the lack of galling.
Does that have to do more with the bearings themselves or the way that they're sealed?
That has more to do with the nature of the bearing itself. The hardness of the bearing, and then the treatment of the race. Now, to get super nerdy here, we're talking about a hybrid ceramic bearing where like Chris King and We Run and Ceramic Speed, you have a steel race, a chromium steel race, and you have in some cases stainless, and then you have the ceramic balls, silicon nitride balls. And the silicon nitride balls are extremely hard, and if you have an inferior race, it will absolutely wear it out in no time at all. I mean, I think everybody's had experiences with cheap ceramics that don't last very long. It's because the silicon nitride ball just completely wears out the race, whether foreign material gets in there or not. It's just going to wipe it out. It's so much harder. So that's why you need to have special heat treatment processes post-production in order to make a race that will hold up to that kind of punishment. And it needs to be polished on the inside, have no stress risers, things like that. And at that point, if something gets in there, it'll pulverize it, essentially. And then, there's also how the bearing fits, like the actual internal tolerance of the bearings themselves are extremely important. You can dial the internal tolerances of the bearings to make a looser running bearing. I mean, if you want to think about like a race engine or something like that. If you want to drop a set of like forged pistons in something, they got like a 3,000th clearance rather than like drop, like a factory cast piston, like a 1,000 clearance, because that's for expansion characteristics. But it's also, if you want to run that thing looser, you run the bearing tolerances in an engine a little bit looser, just because it's going to wind up faster. You can do the same thing with bearings themselves by running a different fit in them to get them to spin up a lot faster and maintain their spin. And that's why a lot of times you'll see, especially on our products, there is a very slight amount of play. A very slight amount, like you would get maybe out of. If you tried to measure it, you wouldn't be able to measure much out of it. Maybe a couple of thou swing. And this has to do a lot with the internal tolerances that we choose to spec on our bearings that make them run so hard. Okay, and we warranty them for life anyway, so we have complete faith in the durability of the product. I mean, it's not a problem. It's just a matter of those decisions you're making, at the front end, rather than just, I get my bearings from a big supplier. If you're some guy, like I'm getting my bearings from a big supplier over in Taiwan or China like that, and I just get whatever they send me. We do not play that. If you are not in control of something as basic as how your bearing performs when it's not even installed in something, you're already out of the game. You need to guarantee that performance. And then after that, it gets to be how it is interfacing with the product and dialing in the right tolerance. So when you press the bearing in, it doesn't have too much compression. And also, these are being press fitted a lot of times. So what you have is the craziest thing ever in the cycling industry. And that is you basically you're double press fitting things. You're stacking tolerances because you're pressing the bearing with an interference fit into a housing like this. And then you're pressing this into a frame that is then needs to put pressure on it in order to retain it. So you're stacking the tolerances on the inside of the bearing pretty severely. So that's another good reason to run them a little bit looser. So they have a performance, plus they have a bit of a hedge. And we also have some internal features in here. We call it our reverse half grip bearing fitment. You can go on our site and see pictures of how that works, where we really only grab half of the bearing, usually the front half of the bearing, and we have a relief on the backside so that the lines of force are not going directly through the center line of all the balls. It actually is offset very slightly. What that does is if there's a too much pressure on it, instead of just shutting the bearings down, the bearing inner race can actually flare out very slightly and move off center. I know, super nerded out right there, but
no, this is exactly what I
that
went
went deep.
Yeah, that was like super deep, man. I should have had some graphics or something. I don't know if my hand motions were quite enough for everybody to follow what was going on there. But as far as our pulleys go, they're fully in molded, so there's no radial compression on them whatsoever. They're just molded into the plastic, into the Delrin material, which we don't do aluminum on our pulleys just because for performance issues with aluminum.
Do you manufacture your own bearings, or do you outsource those with like specific specs?
We do not manufacture our own bearings, but we do. But when you're able to cultivate a relationship with a company that manufactures them, we have a really good partnership with a major bearing supplier for NTN, which NTN is a very high-end Japanese bearing company, and they have subsidiaries that deal with people like us who have some special needs, which is a great program, and they will tailor. Like I said, I was talking about tailoring our fit and things like that. We tell them what grease we want in there, and they do all. They don't just do it their way. Now NTN already makes great bearings, but they're not well suited to a lot of applications for cycling because of some of the things, the aforementioned things about all the variables in the final fit and the final pressure that's on the bearing. NTN's not expecting that. They're expecting everything to be made like it's being made in a machine shop to like a very exacting specs, not like pressing something into carbon fiber that has kind of elasticity to it and all that. But anyhow, so yeah, we do not make them in house. We are looking at doing that though. I mean that's a huge undertaking. And I mean, like I said, I had mentioned kind of when we were talking before we started broadcasting here that I really admire Chris King, what they've been able to do. They manufacture all their bearings in-house in the USA, and I would really like to do that. That's a huge commitment in capital investment that we would like to make. So as soon as we can, we will. We've already talked to some manufacturers who make bearing manufacturing machines, so we can do it here. But for right now, we've just been too small. It's if anybody wants to give me $2 million, we'd be in the bearing business together. So, Lance, I know you like to invest.
I can throw some money at you. I got $50 in my wallet. No, Chris King's here in our backyard, and they've got a huge operation here. But if I recall, I think they've been shut down all year.
They haven't been producing much of anything or anything at all. I know that Envy's not even offering Chris King as an option on their wheel sets right now, and there's a few other manufacturers that typically work with them that have kind of taken them off the menu as well, which is kind of a bummer.
That's horrible. That's horrible. I didn't know that. Maybe that's why Allied Cycling was hitting me up, because they probably need.
Maybe.
They probably because they were pretty serious. They were pretty deep into the Chris King, and they're probably like, oh crap.
We haven't been doing much.
Hey.
Yeah.
I feel horrible for them. Oh my gosh, we've been extremely fortunate here that we haven't had any problems. We haven't been shut down at all, except for like 2 days last week because it was just epic snowmageddon going on around in Little Rock. I couldn't even get into the shop. Even with all-wheel drive, I just like, screw it, I ain't even risking it. But we haven't been closed down for COVID or anything like that.
Good.
So
why don't you do a little bit of a product list for us real quick? What are the main things that you're working on? Is it just pulley wheels and bottom brackets, and that's it?
Yeah, we branched out into doing wheel bearing sets for a little while, and it wasn't anything wrong with it other than it's hard to find wheel bearing specs on every wheel on the planet. So they don't really publish those very dependably, and they change on at a whim. But we decided we just wanted to settle on our core competence, which is bottom bracket performance and pulley wheels, especially with the bottom brackets, that it's extremely underserved from a purely performance standpoint. Okay, there's a lot of companies out there that make a solid bottom bracket, no doubt about it, especially if you're talking about threaded or something like that. But there's nobody, or there wasn't anybody out there making a bottom bracket specifically for the performance market. Now, of course, we really made our name because our stuff doesn't creak. Okay, because that's really the main complaint with press fit, is everybody's like, that's what they're trying to do. They're coming to us to solve a problem.
Yep.
It just so happens that the design that's required to make something, here's a T47, for instance, the design that's required to make something not creak also happens to be perfect for performance. And that is because you get perfect bearing alignment. What we are doing basically is we're making a wheel hub, like a front wheel hub on a bicycle, and we know how nice those spin. We're making one of those that you press into your bike, or in this case with T47, screw into your bike, because we make it all in one pass on the CNC machine. We're not doing multiple processes. We're not turning it around and machining one side, turning around, machining the other, because then you could have, a few thousandths of deviation from basically center to center between the bearings. And we want to have no deviation center to center on the bearings. I mean, we want that thing to be absolute. We get them absolutely perfect, and that's the core reason why our performance is what it is, because the bearings are perfectly aligned. There's a lot of other features that come into play, but at the end of the day, that is what does it. And it also is why it doesn't creak, because it's not multiple pieces. Nothing can come loose. Even thread together ones kind of become unthreaded, and they need to be pulled out and put back together and things like that. Never have that problem with a one-piece design. It completely solves the problem of and performance and creaking all in one, just like that.
Gotcha. All right, so on YouTube right now, we've got a few people that are chiming in. We had one ask a couple questions. Scott Troutman wants to know, how sealed are your bottom brackets for a cyclocross bike? And he's currently running a Specialized Crux with the BB30 in it.
Right. This is always an interesting question, because it's the balance between sealing and performance. What are you trying to do? Okay, do you want to go as fast as possible?
Yes.
And I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive. I'm just saying that in perspective here, if you want to go as fast as possible, you do not want something with very aggressive sealing on it, because it is going to slow you down. It's just a fact of life. There's no way around it, and there's no way to keep water out. I don't care what you do. It's just going to happen. So for anybody looking for something that they want to go out and just pound, day in, day out, they can use our product for that. It's not a problem. But if they're looking for something that they will never have to do maintenance on, there isn't anything. If you never want to do maintenance, you'll just be replacing parts. So, we get people running our product in cyclocross, mountain bike, and have thousands of miles on the bearings. You do occasionally need to do some maintenance. It's super easy to do. We have videos on how to do it. You're just popping the seals off, flushing it out, putting some grease in there, sticking everything back together. It's really not a big deal. But, most people neglect their wheel bearings. I mean, we get bikes in here for bottom brackets all the time, and their wheel bearings are completely blown. They're just completely shot, and they had no idea. And because there's a lot of things we just neglect, and because you know how it is, man. I mean, if you've got an hour in a day, you'd rather ride your bike than work on it. I
Amen.
completely believe me. You're like, you know what I mean? It's like, would you rather ride your bike? Yes, 100%. All you have to do is look at the chain on my bike, and you'll see some. Yeah, I think it's silver under there somewhere, but you have to keep up with your machine, or it's going to screw you over. So as far as the sealing goes, you're going to want to have what we run. We run a low contact seal. There is contact, so it will seal out major debris and things like that. You are going to get water intrusion. There's no doubt about it. If you start submerging it, it will get water in the bearings. If you're running our ceramics, it's not as big a deal. So you're not going to, steel bearings, you're going to have a problem, because if you put it up that way, you go to ride it the next day, and the bearings are like welded to the races and stuff. That can even happen with stainless ones too.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, you have to be realistic about how you're riding and where you're riding. And then you do need to do, you need to figure out a maintenance schedule that works for you, and then go do it.
What would you recommend for somebody living here in the Pacific Northwest? We deal with crappy weather for about half of the year.
Yep.
We're out there riding in the thick of it when we're not riding on Zwift. But what would be a typical maintenance schedule that you would recommend for somebody with a BBinfinite setup?
Well, I would say for BBinfinite and for, basically, I don't care what you're running. You're going to need to do some kind of maintenance.
Yep.
Yeah, but for let's just say for a BBinfinite one, we like to recommend on a mountain bike or cyclocross, about every 40 hours obviously if you're riding down in San Antonio, it's going to be a much different deal. But whether, when you're up in the Pacific Northwest, that's very wet. I probably wouldn't want to run steel bearings too much up in the Pacific Northwest. I would probably really steer more towards ceramics, just because they do better in the wet. They don't have as many problems. Once you do get water intrusion, they don't have as many issues as steel ones, because they don't, obviously the race is steel, but it doesn't have quite the pitting problems that you're going to get when you've got steel on steel. It causes more of an issue. We really got that baptism by fire years ago when we were sponsoring some people out in Belgium. And, you know what I mean? In Belgium, they're like, if it's not raining, they're not sure they should go out for a ride or not. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because it's just like, it's not hard enough. So and we had some of our earlier bearings. We had some, it's like everything else, man. Some of our earlier bearings. We're on our fourth generation of ceramic bearings right now, like
Oh,
our
wow.
fourth improvement over time. Yeah. These aren't the original bearings we started out with. You got to learn lessons. That's just part of life. And the Belgians really showed us the way. They showed us that steel bearings are a mistake in a lot of these applications that are super wet, and that the ceramic bearings are good, but you need to be really on top of the race heat treating even more so. And then, we've developed our WS2 coating, which is a tungsten disulfide coating that's extremely hard and super slippery. They use it on like Dana rear ends and stuff like that in like race cars and on all kinds of stuff because of its low coefficient of friction. And that's been a real game changer as far as, keeping keeping everything running really well when there's really ugly situations as far as the weather goes and the conditions.
With the ceramic bearings, they should be smoother, they should last longer, and they're more expensive, correct?
They're more expensive because they're more expensive to produce.
Okay.
That's the main reason by far. They're a lot more expensive to produce than steel. As far as smoother, our ABEX 7 steel bearings are freaking tremendous.
Yeah.
They are really good. They were so good that it really, we needed to up our game a little bit on the ceramics even more because they're really good, and to be able to outperform them is pretty difficult. But as far as for, like we said, weather conditions go, I would really favor the ceramics more in really bad weather. Wet. When I say bad, let's just say more like if you're in England, places where people go out and they ride in the rain. They don't they don't avoid it. Then
Portland.
ceramics way to go.
Every
Portland
cross race.
Yeah, like where you guys are.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I get back from a ride, and let's say that I had a steel bearing in my bottom bracket, I need to rinse my bike off. I need to clean it because it's going to be covered in everything. It's going to be pretty beat up.
Mm-hmm.
Protocol for the bearing though, once I'm done like spraying everything down and cleaning and drying my chain and lubing the chain, what should I do for my bottom bracket after every ride? Is using an air compressor sufficient to kind of try and blow some of the fluids out of there?
Nah, and I really wouldn't. Here's what I would do is I would just like with your wheels, I would assess them, dynamically. I would just pull, once I had the bike up in the stand, I would roll the wheels and see if I can feel vibrations through the frame. I would pull the chain aside, and free spin the crank and see if everything seems to be working fine. If it's working fine and you've done maintenance, in a reasonable amount of time, I would continue to ride it. It's not one of these things you gotta, like a dragster, like every run they're pulling the heads off of it, in the pits or something. It's not like that. It's just something you need to be mindful of on some kind of regular schedule. And there's just races like the Dirty Kanza. If you're not taking your entire bike apart after something like that, you're doing yourself a disservice because, people wear out cassettes and chains and you know what I mean in one race. You know what I'm saying? I've seen people do it, in quite a few races, not even 24-hour races or just completely wasted drivetrain in a single race just because, the grit aspect and all that sort of thing. So you just need to be mindful and kind of assess the situation and go on your own experience. You'll get a feel for it, what kind of maintenance schedule you should be on, and then follow our rough, guidelines for like about every 40 hours or so, do an actual take it apart and maintain it on a mountain or cyclocross, and on a road bike about every 2,000 miles or so. Those are good. Those are good all arounders. Yeah.
Gotcha. Matt, you said you had a list of questions. What else you got for Gary here?
Yeah. Okay. So another question that I get a lot is kind of like, I would say the way to describe it would be like watts per dollar gained. These people that are trying to buy speed and things like that. This is tough too because it's like bearings tend to be not the highest kind of watts per dollar gain that you would get when you're looking at like making an upgrade. However, like you mentioned, like durability is like such a huge thing that people kind of overlook when they're talking about this stuff. What are you guys seeing from the time trial dorks and the guys like that are just like, I'm willing to fork over cash.
Right. Yeah. The guys that are doing tries and especially time trials are going to be a lot more sensitive to it because they crunch that kind of data. I mean, they're all real number crunchers. They write a lot of the same courses over and over again in similar conditions, and they're real attuned to, their bodies and all that kind of stuff. So you can get a lot of good dynamic data from guys that are just going out and doing that. We have a lot of people that partner with us doing that, sharing their data with us. We've got some people in the U.S. Olympic team that are nice enough that are running our products on the Paralympic team. Jason Makem, what's up? And some other guys that are, they're, top flight athletes giving us over some data. But at the end of the day, I think the ultimate question is, the word is thrown around, or the term is thrown around, is like incremental gains. And when it comes down to it, every gain is incremental. That is what we're all chasing all the time. We're chasing it with our own fitness. When we all want to go out and see improvement, right, over a course, and how are we doing that? We're doing that incrementally, right? I mean, it's a little bit at a time. Sometimes we go back, sometimes we go forward, but ultimately we want to take 2 steps up. If we're going to take one back, we at least want to take some up. So when it comes to drivetrain efficiency, they are all incremental gains. That's just a fact. They are. But that can't be belittled in the fact that if you could gain the same amount or lose the same amount in your PR, if you can gain 10 seconds in a PR by changing out a part, that might not sound like much, over a 43 kilometer time trial or something like that, to do like a 2 second or 3 second gain or something like that. But I mean, I don't know. I've been around plenty of races where people win by literal hundredths of a second. So these things are important. Now, are they, then the thing is like, well, what about when I'm just going out riding with my buddies? That's up to that person to make a value judgment at that point. Don't you want to beat your buddies? Who doesn't? I mean, I want to throw them all into the pain cave and watch them suffer and my goal at every ride, whenever I'm in a group ride, would be to make everyone that was riding with me at the end of it they're questioning their choices, right? You know what I mean? I want them to be like somebody at the end at least to grab their bike and throw in a ditch and go, screw this, man. You know what I mean?
I want to ride with Gary.
And
that sounds familiar.
That gets done to me more than anything, but just saying, it does depend on your goals. And I understand what the question is, like, where as far as like, where's the value? Okay. The value really gets to be, you are investing, especially with bikes. Okay. You are investing in you. Okay. The whole reason you are out on the bike is for you. It's a very selfish endeavor. Okay. Let's face it. You're out there to perform at your best. And really, there is no reason to underperform. As a matter of fact, that should offend everybody. Just the idea that it's like, well, I'm going to go out and sandbag it today. You're like, what? Why are you here? You know what I mean? So what you're after ultimately is you're after a high performance part with the durability. You get all of that, everything you want. That's really the value you're after. Okay, and that's what we're about delivering. I was saying earlier, that's why our stuff is serviceable, so you can keep the performance going. Okay, so it's not just a constant degradation in performance, because there's another good reason to maintain it right there, is because if you're not maintaining enough, you will lose performance, and then you can, like anybody who's ever cleaned their chain and then going out and ridden and going like, oh my God, I can't believe how big a difference that made just having a clean chain. So, and because human power output is so finite, okay, that you only have so much to put out. A few watts are something you literally will feel for sure, which is why I love our pulleys, because when somebody puts our pulleys on their bike, I know for a fact that when they go out there, they'll ride about 15, 20 feet and they'll go like, really? I cannot believe that made that big a difference. And it's because once again, our power output is so finite, and our feel is for ourselves, as a biological entity in this world, the way we sense our own output and our own fatigue and all that kind of stuff, we're very attuned to that. You are going to feel a difference in very small amounts of performance, in different performance. You'll feel it every time.
Yeah. Do you guys use any of that for marketing material? I know ceramic speed is kind of famous, infamous. I don't know how you want to describe it, for like talking about, the expected gains for switching from, one piece to the next. Is that something that you guys tout, or do you guys more focus on some of the other things that you mentioned before, like durability and serviceability of the product?
Yeah, I mean, we do have some things on our website that shows, different bench testing results and things we've done. I hate to equivocate, but I'm not as into that personally.
No, I think it's actually kind of relieving a little bit, because it's almost like, but there's more important things to think about here. So it's just kind of nice to hear the other side of the coin.
Well, yeah, I mean, do we know? The biggest thing is we do the testing so we know we're hitting the sweet spot. Okay? More than just a marketing ploy, I want to make sure that this configuration, this setup, and all that kind of stuff is an improvement over what we were doing before. Okay? So we can quantify things. Now, as far as, differences in bearing performance or bottom bracket performance, it's very hard to compare, because it all depends on, if somebody has been riding that bike for a long time and they're replacing it with another part, then that other part that they replaced was the baseline for how they're making their judgment. And when they put the new one in, they'll feel the performance difference, and that's awesome. But it all depends on what condition that bottom bracket was in before, on how much of a difference they're going to feel. I mean, if the thing was completely wasted, they're going to feel a lot more different.
Yeah.
Right? If it was in tip-top shape and it was just creaking like mad and they just had to get it out of there, they're going to feel a difference with our product, because our product spins like nothing else. It just won't be as dramatic, you know what I mean, as if that same exact person had a completely blown bottom bracket and switched to our product. Now the pulleys, I keep coming back to that because it's a lot easier for me to predict the customer experience with the pulleys, because the factory pulleys suck that bad. Okay, I don't care if they're I don't care if they're brand new. I don't care if they've got 2,000 miles on them. Their spin on factory Shimano pulleys is absolutely abysmal. I know that if you put our product on your bike, it's going to blow your mind, and there's just no two ways about it. And they're incredibly durable. I mean, dude, we've got people with 20,000 miles on them, so they're like proven, they're race proven. We've had, pro continental teams riding on them for an entire season. Those guys are really big into maintenance. You know what I mean? It's not like pro teams. These guys are doing their own maintenance. You know what I mean? They got jobs, and they're trying to still ride 6-8 hours a day and stuff like that. So
why do you think that is, that you're paying for, like, let's say Shimano Dura Ace components, and they have those same standard pulley wheels back there that that they would sell on a lot of different products? Like, why would they not make any sort of effort on those particular piece of the puzzle, right? I mean, you think that they've looked at all of the different parts of the drivetrain and they've thought, like, in my mind, I'm thinking like, hey, this is low hanging fruit.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be glib, because I really can't read Shimano's mind, but you kind of have to do that a little bit when you're studying essentially your opposition in a lot of ways, and you really dig into their products over time and know how they think. So basically, your performance is not important to them. I know that might sound kind of weird, but your riding performance is not what's important. To them, what's important is the performance of their product. Okay, the way the shifters are shifting and all that kind of stuff, which I love Shimano. It's just not a criticism of Shimano. They're absolutely amazing engineers, and all that kind of stuff. But I think they're extremely conservative when it comes to durability. And this doesn't mean we sacrifice durability, but Shimano is on another level. They like triple seal things. Their bottom brackets barely even spin. You know what I mean? And their products hurt people's performance. Their bottom bracket hurts people's performance. Sorry, Shimano. I mean, I hate to throw you under the bus like that. You know what I mean? Love everything else.
And they do the same thing with, I feel like they sometimes do the same thing with chains and the way that they're packaged and things like that. It's more set up for, like, longevity on the shelf and things like that, where it seems questionable that it's not super.
You mean like that goop they send on the chain and people think that's lube?
Yeah.
Yep. Clean that crap off. Don't put it on your bike like that. That stuff is disgusting. It's like Cosmoline or something. No, get that off there.
I think Ceram's worse than Shimano, if I remember correctly.
I always take a chain out of the package and clean it. I put it in denatured alcohol and let it soak and clean it before I ever do that. Even if I'm just putting rock and roll lube, which is awesome. If you're not actually like doing like a paraffin wax deal on your chains, rock and roll is awesome stuff. That's all I ever use. But anyhow,
that leads to my.
But yeah,
that does lead to my next question. Yeah. I think I use rock and roll, and I use, what is the other white one that we sometimes throw around? Squirt. Yeah, that's more like paraffin. That's more. Well, it's kind of a paraffin wax based lubricant.
I haven't had that one yet.
Oh yeah, you should check it out. It's easy.
What is the bottle shape like?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Jeez.
What makes, so you talked about lubrication of bearings and things like that. What makes a particular type of lubricant better than a different type of lubricant when it comes to like bearing lubrication?
Squirt.
Oh, that's the squirt. That is a very good question, because that is extremely. Oh, there you go. Squirt. Okay, not the bottle shape I was expecting. I was expecting something more rocket shape.
Too close. Stay on target.
Nice. Nice. So anyway, what was the question? No, the lubricant.
Just talking about like how you guys make that judgment call, right? Where it's like there's just different pieces of viscosity and
especially. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This goes for ceramic bearings in particular, but it also applies to anything with a very small ball bearing in it. Okay, because even these bearings right here, this is our 4030 bearing, they've or a 6806 bearing. Those are still miniature bearings, right? So they have very small bearings inside of them. So we don't want to use a lube, which a lot of people have a tendency to do. Use a grease that has a high viscosity, that's extremely thick and sticky, because what it will do is when you pack all that inside the bearings actually don't roll in through the races; they slide. Okay, and you'll see this a lot of times. People will when they this is good because we were talking about servicing earlier. Is that's why the amount of grease fill is so important. Okay, you don't want to just pack it in there 100% full of grease, and you especially don't want to use something that has a very high viscosity, is very sticky because of that, because it'll act as the bearings will just be orbiting in the races instead of rolling through them. So we use a Kluber Isoflex NB52, which is a really cool, which is a great lube all around. It's great on all of these bearings. Ceramic Speed, you could use Ceramic Speed's lubes on our bearings. We don't care. Because it's another one. You basically you get it between your fingers. It doesn't feel like it's sticking together. You know what I mean? And that's really that's a good test right there. If it doesn't feel like it wants to glue your fingers together before you kind of have to pop them apart. You want something with a low viscosity so that the balls can get the lubricant that they need, which is great with ceramics, especially because you don't have to put that much in there. It gets that little bit of lubrication and ease, and they're able to roll as they're going around, because I don't know how people understand how ball bearings work, but that's what's happening is as the inner race is turning, the balls themselves are spinning inside of there like little wheels, and they're spinning in the opposite direction, right? So the inner race is going to be spinning, let's say clockwise, and all the little balls are going to be spinning anti-clockwise as it goes around, which is why there's left and right, which is why there's left-hand threaded bottom brackets like this T47 and threaded English, is because the idea is the action of the bearing spinning will naturally be tightening the bottom bracket. It's kind of a mind twister, but anyway, as those balls are spinning through there, you need a low viscosity at the end of the day. I guess that's the final question. So you don't want to be using a grease that's inappropriate for bearings this size. It's extremely important. So if you go with a Kluber Isoflex like we sell in our shop, that's great. Ceramic Speed grease is good. The FSA grease, all of that are specifically for ceramic bearings, all of them are going to be appropriate because they are going to have, and we've seen ourselves that they have the appropriate viscosity, because it's not as much about a brand necessarily, although I like Finish Line as well, and we favor Kluber, but it's about having it be appropriate for the application.
Do you guys specify the amount of like lubricant that is for a specific bearing set? Because I think that would
we
be
do.
super critical too if you have documentation on that sort of stuff for people or mechanics.
Yeah, it's hard to it is
Right.
hard for people in the field to reproduce that though. I mean, when I say, oh, the best would be like a 30% fill, somebody's like, what? I mean, at that point, I would need to have a preloaded syringe with, it's like if you have a 6806 bearing, this syringe, if you put all of the grease in there, will be the right amount, and that's just unrealistic. That's just not how it goes. Like preloaded. What I would say is, you want to, once you get it all cleaned out, you want to basically, if you put grease in about half the bearing, or you skip every other ball, and just kind of squirt in between there, and then just roll the bearing around to distribute the grease, you're probably going to be okay. Okay, but to get in there and just pack in as much as you possibly can is actually a big mistake. Even with the low viscosity greases, they're extremely forgiving. That's another reason why we like them, is because you're less likely to put too much grease in there. Like it's your Volkswagen Super Beetle or something like that, and you're repacking the bearings and you just try to put as much in there as possible. That's not what we're after.
Yeah. This is my classic mistake where it's like, oh, this stuff is good, I better go with a lot of it.
Oh, exactly.
It'll make me fast.
Without a doubt. Yeah, grease is one of those things that's clearly not that way.
That's a great question, a great response. Thanks, guys. Lance has got another little laundry list of questions over there. I think we could go on for days here, but yeah, let's keep rifling through them.
When I think about BBinfinite, my automatically thought is they're smooth and they're quiet. And I think, am I getting kind of, is that what you're trying to portray? Is that what your product does? It should be smoother and it should be quieter.
Well, it should be dead quiet. The whole thing where somebody's like, well, I went to my bike mechanic and he said that, well, these kind of bikes just creak. There is not a bike out there that some guy designed and it just creaks. It just doesn't work that way. Your bike should always be quiet. It shouldn't be creaking anywhere. I mean, drivetrain noise notwithstanding. So as far as smoothness goes, to have the most solid pedaling platform is really what we're after. Okay, because you want to have somebody, as they're moving through, when they're riding their cadence or whatever, when they're moving through that full range of motion, it just feels like butter, like you're skating on ice. You know what I mean? That's what we're after. At the beginning, we set our standard. We said, how do we know we've succeeded in making a press fit bottom bracket perform the way we want? And it said, if it spins like a circa 1990 Campy square taper bottom bracket. Because those things were like, spin it, come back, 6 days later, and it's still spinning. I mean, they were just absolutely mind-blowing, the performance. And they lasted forever. So that was really my benchmark, because I had quite a few of those systems in the, throughout time. And I used to be a huge Campy guy. And still love Campy, don't get me wrong. It's just, unfortunately, it's incompatible with a lot of the newer bikes, which is really unfortunate for Campy. They need to. I don't know what they need to do. I can't tell them. They know their business. But, I mean, get EPS if you've got something with crazy housing, like really like crazy bends and stuff like that, because the mechanical stuff just really suffers on that because of the way their mechanism works. But anyhow, I digress. That's how we knew it, because we want to be absolutely dead silent, which is what we get with the one-piece design. And then from the bearing quality, the bearing fitment, which is why I love T47, is because T47, I never have to worry about T47, if somebody's going to press it into a frame that they got from a manufacturer that's maybe not as, let's just say, as good with their tolerances, for lack of a better term, that they might have a degradation of performance, and it makes our product look bad just because their frame is over compressing it. With T47, that's never going to be a problem, because it is threaded on the outside. It has a looseness, even like it is a T47 internal right here. So the bearings are internal inside the frame, which is where you run into problems with press fit sometimes, because the frame has, the force stresses right on top of the bearing and shoots right down through the race and tries to impinge on the bearings if it's excessively tight. T47 is never going to have that problem because it is basically a loose fit, because it has to thread together. And that really, thank you, Chris King, by the way, for T47. Because I was real down on it at first, but once I wrapped my head around it and quit being so butthurt, the fact that people were, saying bad things about press fit, because we felt like we solved the press fit problem. I was a little butthurt when I saw Chris King and all these people are going to go back to threaded. And I was like, what are you doing, dude? One piece press fit, baby. We solved the problem. Get your head out of your butt. But really, honestly, what they did is he created just this monster fat bottom bracket that let us do everything we wanted. We could have our way with this standard. And I can dial the bearing fit in on this sucker so good, and I never have to worry about the frame over compressing it. So I'm really in love with that. I'm really in love with T47 these days, man. He gave us, thank you, Chris King. You gave us a canvas where we could really draw exactly what we want, paint exactly the picture we wanted to paint. So it's
going back to that single shell and overcompressing and tolerances and all that other stuff, how many phone calls, emails, and smoke signals are you responding to with respect to people putting that in for the first time and calling you up and going, I think my frame is about ready to explode. What am I doing wrong here? Do you guys deal with that all the time?
Oh yeah. That's a big part of our customer service, is helping people install the product. That's why we like to be very available.
Yeah.
And not on the phone too much these days, because it would be impossible.
Yeah.
Because we do sell a lot of product, and if people want to call to order and do all kinds of stuff. So we've really shifted more toward, we do a lot of Facebook and Instagram messages.
Sure.
And a lot of emails, and we're very responsive. Pretty much on Sunday is the only day you're not going to be able to get a hold of us.
Gotcha.
And we help people all the time. The vast majority of the installs are going to go down without a hitch. I mean,
Correct.
You got a Bianchi, you've got a Trek, you're not going to have a problem. You know what I mean? Every once in a while, everything in life is about, you have a big population, then you have outliers. All right. So, even big manufacturers like a Cervelo or a Cannondale or whatever it is, there's an outlier. The 98% is in good shape. And then there's 1% on either end that's way too tight or way too loose. And it's just a fact. Every once in a while, and somebody's going to get, draw the short straw, and they're going to get one that's way too tight. And then they start putting it in their bike, and they're like, hey, man, I'm trying to put it in my bike, and it won't go in. Or, hey, I put it in my bike and now the bearings aren't running so good. What do I do? We help people through that. I'm not like, oh, that sucks, man. This is what outliers are. You have an outlier and it sucks to be you, man. But hey, man, maybe you shouldn't play the lottery. That's BS. Well, we want our customers to be extremely happy at the end of the day, and we want them to have a great deal of satisfaction. And we've had people send us frames before to correct some serious problems. You might have seen some of our videos where it shows us reaming out a bottom bracket and doing things like that. We've corrected some frames for people before, even one from a major manufacturer, which I think they just forgot to resize it from the frame. I mean, you could barely get a bottom bracket of any kind in this bike, and they've been riding it for a year or two.
Gotcha.
And we ended up reaming like 4 thousandths worth of material, which is a lot of material out of the bike just so we could get a BB. It was a BB86 bike. Get a BB86 bottom bracket into it. Of course, it spun awesome after that because when the tolerances are dead on, it's really good. But once again, a lot of it has to do. You have to fix that on the front side. You have to create a design like this right here, right there. You have to create a design that, intrinsic to the design, it can handle a certain amount of overcompression. You can't just design everything to say, oh, I'm always going to get like the Cinderella zone, because you're not. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we do especially with the way we shape our bores, because we don't have parallel bores. I already discussed this about our half grip. We don't have parallel bores in our product for a reason, and that is because if we did that, we would have a lot more performance issues and a lot more frames, because there's a lot of frames that are on that ragged edge of being too tight. Because and I don't blame the manufacturer for that too much, because if they make a frame that's too big, it's junk, right? If they make a frame that's too small, then they could revise it, or at least it's not junk anymore, right? And they can still send them out. So they're always aiming for that the tight side of the tolerances. And this really shows itself with Cervelo. We have a lot of experience with Cervelo, and I can tell you right now, if you made a bottom bracket that was 46 millimeter, which 46 millimeter nominal is what BBRite is supposed to be. If you put a 46 millimeter nominal bottom bracket in a Cervelo, it will shut the bearings down right away. Okay, it is not going to work. Okay, because they make their frames so much smaller than 46. Okay, they make them a good deal smaller than 46. So our Cervelo BB Right product, which is a luxury we have because they're the only ones running BB Right besides Factor. We can talk about that in another moment. We were able to dial our outer diameter, which we call our frame-specific diameter construction. We were able to tailor our outer diameter more toward what Cervelo actually makes rather than what they say they make. Okay, so because if we tried to make it according to what they say they make, our bottom brackets would suck in their bikes. It would be awful.
Yeah.
So we actually had to go with a slightly smaller dimension. You can buy one of our products and mic it if you want to know what that is. I'm not going to say. But we make it to a slightly different dimension in order to get the performance we need to get out of Cervelos because of the way they actually make their product when it comes off the line.
Good.
Not everybody's like that. I don't have the luxury with that with BB86, which is just so ubiquitous right now, thanks to Shimano. But everybody seems to be all the people making BB86 seem to be working out pretty well. They're really hitting that number pretty good. So a 41 millimeter nominal bottom bracket fits in it like a glove and works really well.
Gotcha. One of our other questions on the list that we have here is what bike company has the best tolerances and the best bottom bracket design?
Wow. None of them have the
that.
best bottom bracket design. We do. No. I would say who has the cleanest frames. I mean, Specialized has always been fantastic. You know, man, I was talking about their OSBB design, their OSBB press fit design that they campaigned like from the first Venge on, and they now have gone back to threaded, which was such a huge mistake. First of all, I mean, Specialized, why didn't you go to T47? Why did you go back to English threaded, which is a very restrictive bottom bracket standard when people are trying to fit larger spindles? That didn't make any sense to me why they did that. But they were just trying to get people to stop complaining about creaking, yes. But those bottom brackets that were coming out in those Specialized bikes were so freaking perfect, and they were made out of carbon fiber. They were so good, man. We can put a bottom bracket in that thing, and the performance is going to be amazing every time. I've never seen one be screwed up, like from the factory, ever. They're just really dead on. But now they're threaded again, so all that, whatever. And Cannondale's good. Cannondale's really, really pretty good too. But I'm not going to tell you who the worst is.
Oh, come on.
But the other
edgy. Let's go.
The other company that always does a great job, and they got so much grief for their bottom bracket design, was Trek when they were doing BB90. That's a tricky thing they were trying to do, and you know they did an amazing job building those frames. Trek BB90 frames are extremely. I mean, their bottom brackets are extremely square. I mean, the bearings are very well aligned. I mean, those bikes are made extremely well. They really are. I mean, Trek really makes a nice bike. We can talk about whether BB90 itself, pressing the bearings directly into a carbon frame, was a good idea, but they were excellent at making bikes. And Felt makes a really clean product too. They're not very popular. They don't get like talked about a lot, but Felt bicycles I think are really slick. They do a really nice job.
Good. What's your thought on BMC? We deal with a lot of BMC here.
BMC, I think BMC is good too. There's some anomalies with BMC, just like Scott that maybe I'm not the biggest fan of. Just like Giant, they tend to put they tend to think that the inside of the bike in between the bottom bracket bearings is like a playground where they can just install new furniture and playground equipment and stuff like that. So they tend to want to do stuff like the foil. They tend to want to put like nobody's using this spot for a one-piece bottom bracket. Let's put a feature in here that almost touches a 24 millimeter spindle if you try to put it in there. You know what I mean? Like on a Scott foil with the, you know, if you're not running Di2 on there, if you're running mechanical, you know, they have like an internal obstruction just because of the way they do. And of course, Giant has a lot of bikes like this that they have the cable guides are come up into the bottom bracket area. Yeah. Whereas if you tried to, you know, look through the bottom bracket area, there's a big hump in there. Mm-hmm. And that would be the Achilles heel of the one piece design bottom bracket is it needs to have an unimpeded, unobstructed straight shot through the bottom bracket shell, or else you're not going to get in there. These things don't go around corners worth of crap. You know what I mean? So it needs to be able to shoot right in there. And then there's these weird features BMC likes to put in there where they just have like a little, they can get a little messy inside, and you need to go in there with a Dremel and smooth them out. That really freaks people out, and I completely understand that. But
done that a few times.
There's quite a few.
You know what? I'm not seeing,
yeah, they've got like this weird lip in there, and I'm like, what is that for?
Yeah, I haven't seen it on any of the models from about 2020 forward. So the last two iterations,
it was kind of an older BMC.
Yeah, it was like a 2017, 2018.
Just like Giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like Giant, the older TCRs and stuff like that, the 2014s, 2016 range, we had more problems with them, and I'm not sure if Canyons aren't that way anymore, but Canyons were like, I don't know if Giant makes Canyons bikes for them, but man, their bottom brackets construction is really similar. Let me just say that. So, yeah, I don't know who makes their bikes, but if it was Giant, I wouldn't be surprised.
Gotcha.
Just by the way they look.
All right, Gary, is there anything else that you want to go through with us that you would like to tell people about or show people, or anything that we might have missed during our conversation?
No, I think it was great. I hope everybody is going to come away with a lot of understanding about a lot of things that has to do with bottom bracket construction.
Sure.
And the basics of design. Really, when it comes down to it, the one-piece design bottom bracket is the only way to go. The screw together ones, all of that sort of thing. Even ours ones like here that threads in. Here's our T47. The bearings are still in a single housing, right?
Yep.
So we're able to manage the fit of the bearings and the alignment of the bearings. We're not relying on the frame manufacturer to do that. And that's when you're going to run into all kinds of problems. All right. Because remember, these bikes, especially the carbon fiber ones, they're in a mold. Okay. And there's a two half of the bikes, and they seam them together a lot of times, right? That toward the middle. Right. So to have perfect alignment through the bottom bracket shell, it could easily be off a thou or two or more. And that's all you need in order to start to impinge the bearings and things like that as you force a spindle through there. And it wants to align the inner races out of phase with the outer races where because they're pressed into the frame, and the inner races are trying to mate to it. So at the end of the day, the one-piece bottom bracket, we would think, should dominate the bottom bracket space going forward. I don't understand why anybody's making anything different right now. Probably should put that right side up so people can read it. I don't know why anybody's making anything different right now. I mean, there's we have a patent on the one-piece design, but I expect other people to be making it just because it's such a no-brainer. And once again, I don't understand why any manufacturer wouldn't be moving in that direction, because it solves all the problems they're trying to solve. Whether it's press fit or anything else, it solves the creaking problems. It solves the performance issues. It makes the bearings last a lot longer, because when the bearings are not in an advantageous position for their operation, they won't last as long, because you're putting forces on the bearing in different spots. You're making the bearings and having contact in unevenly, and we have bushings in between our races to stabilize the inner race on all of our press fit 30 and dub. For a reason, and that's to prevent fretting on the crank spindle, which you'll see on the line. I don't have one here right now, but they'll have marks on the crank spindle. That's an indication that the inner races are actually wobbling around a little bit while you're riding, kind of sticking and coming loose on the spindle itself. The bushing in there is what stabilizes the inner races and unitizes them, so the inner races are not trying to move independently, basically inside of the bearing itself. I hope this is coming through loud and clear.
It is.
But but these design features are at the core of why our performance is what it is, and why our durability is what it is. Because durability goes way beyond just whether or not the bearings are sealed properly. That's just part of it. That's kind of a misnomer to think that's where the story ends. The story is the bearing, does it have radial compression on it? If so, that's going to accelerate the wear. Are the inner races stabilized? If not, that could accelerate wear. All of these factors all come together to make not only a durable product, but also a product that performs at a very high level. And the reason for that is because when everything is working in harmony, none of these problems are a problem. And that's really what the one-piece design is all about.
Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. Matt, Lance, do you guys have any other questions for Gary?
I love it. I'm just happy to have you on here. I've learned a lot about bearings and single units and all that stuff, which I think is good. I've been using these bottom brackets for a number of years. The scariest part is installing them when they make noise, when they creak, when you're
the popping noise.
You get that popping noise.
Yeah.
But
the popping noise isn't the frame expanding or any of that kind of stuff. The popping noise is generally only going to happen when you've got the retaining compound on there, because it's an anaerobic retaining compound. So when you start pressing it in, it's excluding the oxygen because the tolerances become zero, right? I mean, they're tight. So it excludes the oxygen. There's that thin film of the retaining compound in there, and that begins to light off immediately. The minute you exclude the oxygen, it starts lighting off. People are all like, oh, let it cure for 24 hours, let it cure, whatever. It is literally curing instantly to an extent while you're going in. So that's when you put the retaining compound in there and you're putting it in there. You need to make sure the press and everything is ready so that once you start hearing that popping, you can just continue to lay into it and just drive until it's home. Yeah, until it's home. And that's what's happening. It's lighting off, and as you put more pressure on it, it breaks loose and advances, and it starts to light off again. And then as you put more pressure on it, breaks loose and advances. That's where that pop, pop, pop sound is coming from.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what freaks people out is the popping sound when you put them in. But I'm used to
that's
it
a
now.
good. The popping sound is a good sound.
Okay,
it's a good sound because it means the retaining compound is lighting off, and if it's sometimes you get good retention even when you don't hear that sound, but you really do want to hear that sound at some point, some kind of popping sound, because that's the real indication that you're getting a good tight fit and that you don't have contamination, such as kind of like an oil or a grease contamination that's contaminating the retaining compound and would be preventing it from lighting off.
Interesting.
Okay, so
cool.
So if you get it nice and clean. Yeah. Well, all things bottom bracket. We've got the info.
Yeah, I've been sold on bottom brackets with BBinfinite for a long time, as well as the pulleys, and this is just like solidifying that even more.
Right.
So,
right.
Cool. Matt,
I'm so glad, because I gotta go back and watch this after it's all done and see if I was just babbling the whole time.
Matt, did you have any
I'm
questions?
gonna listen to it and I go like, geez, I didn't even answer that guy's question. I just babbled.
No, this is perfect. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I wanted to learn about because, I think the misnomer is that, we all know this stuff already, or we're born with this knowledge. And like, the truth is, like, we all have to figure this out at some point. There's still so much more to learn about this stuff. Like, I always hesitate, like, oh, do I make a video about this topic? I'm not the world's leading expert on it, like, but at the same time, the more we can learn about it so that we're not passing on disinformation to people, the better. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to the group here.
Oh, that's no problem at all. And don't worry, the trolls will let you know if you made a mistake.
They do.
If you misspoke.
They always do.
At 20 minutes and 32 seconds, you say that, you know what I mean? That guy.
Yep.
All right, my friends.
All right, let's jump into one last thing real quick before we shut things down here. Lance, go. One last thing.
I'm going to race my mountain bike with the BBinfinite bottom bracket in it this weekend, hopefully again, if the course is not snowed out. It might be snowed out. The race is up around Wenatchee.
We're supposed to have good weather on Saturday, aren't we, or no?
Yes, we are.
But it's leading into that.
It's leading into it.
Gotcha.
Will the course actually be snow-free? That's what we're hoping.
Interesting. Cool. Matt, one last thing.
New video coming out this week. I'll be talking about Garmin product, the Garmin 745, which is this watch here. It's a great watch, great option. It's basically a review after having used it for 100 days, and then a whole bunch of more Garmin stuff coming out on my channel. I've got to get to work on the Garmin Enduro. That's their new ultra running watch with ridiculous battery life. And then some other little things to do with Garmin as well. So a whole bunch of Garmin stuff coming down the pipeline before we get back to bike stuff.
Nice.
Well, I guess Garmin stuff is bike stuff too. I mean, I have bike computers from them to review as well. So, but yeah, I got to get away from Garmin at some point. So I'll have to mix it up at some point. Maybe I'll talk about
No. Garmin's great. I love Garmin.
Garmin's great, but yeah, you got to mix it up. Can't just do Garmin stuff all the time.
Gary, one last thing from you. Can be anything.
I need to get you guys some swag.
Oh,
I don't see any BBinfinite hats. I don't see any. You guys aren't representing. Come on, man.
I've got some stuff on the shelf. I've got some product. Yeah, but yeah, some swag would be fantastic.
Well, we need to do that, and And come check out BBinfinite.com. Our Facebook page is very we're very active on there. Instagram, we're very active, and we need to be a lot better on YouTube. We're making great strides in that. We kind of neglected to pour in the YouTube channel, and we like to put out a lot of information, a lot of shop information that show installs, branching out into things that aren't just about our product as well. I like to help people out learning how to do things like bleed their brakes better, using the right fluids, like what Matt was saying about using the right, don't put out disinformation. I guess more than anything, we really just like to help people.
Nice, that's very good. Cool.
Right
my one last thing is Lance and I are. Well, I've been working on it. I think Lance is going to jump in now because he's riding himself a new gravel bike. He's got himself a new BMC Oars.
Yes, I am.
And I think we're going to be finishing up our video hopefully this week before he jets out of town to go do his mountain bike race.
Excellent.
So should have another review on the BMC Oars from somebody that's been riding it for just over a year and somebody that's been riding it for about a week.
Perfect.
That should be a lot of fun.
Excellent.
If anybody wants to check out BB Infinite, again, go to BBinfinite.com and order yourself some stuff up there. If you're local here, we are dealing with BB Infinite all the time. If you need some help getting a set of pulley wheels or a bottom bracket installed, we'd be happy to help you out with that, and we'll take good care of you. We do greatly appreciate you coming on with us today, Gary. This has been fantastic, and here we are, an hour and a half into this thing. We've just been rambling on about bottom brackets and bearings. It's been fantastic, but it's been educational at the same time.
I love it. Yeah.
People are like, how long did you talk about that? But it is what it is. So
anytime you want to nerd out talking about bearings, it's a passion. Believe it or not, they're fascinating. They really are.
You don't say. So, but you guys can check the video out on YouTube. For those of you who are going to be listening to this when it comes out live on Wednesday, well, I guess it wouldn't be live, but on the podcast on Wednesday, you can go to YouTube, which is that's youtube.com/dialed cycling. And we'll have that posted up there. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us accordingly. Again, everybody, thank you for joining us. Gary, take care. Thank you for your time. Until next time, bye for now.